The goal of this, session essentially is to talk to thought leaders like Nick, see how cutting edge security teams like the one in Snap or the ones in Google or Amazon essentially use open source software at scale to keep their security program, keep their security apparatus consistently cutting edge. With that, to introduce myself, of course, I'm Sandeep, co-founder with You at Defense. I have Nick with me, security engineering leader at Snap. Nick, once again, welcome to the session.
Yeah, absolutely, Sandeep. Thank you again for having me. Look, it's been a wild journey. I'm an immigrant kid who came here at 5 years old with 2 bags and a dream. My family landed in JFK some 20 years ago, more than that, actually, like 30 years ago. About age 16, I realized that the security industry is my calling, and since then, I've been at it for 20 years. And in the past, like 5 years or so, something changed in my career. I realized I've learned a lot and I've harvested a lot of knowledge. And now it's time to give back that knowledge. I look after corporate security at Snap. Also have interest in a lot of other areas that I've talked about with teaching and my personal research. So yeah, that's a little bit of background.
And you know what? I think one of the common themes that both of us have sort of interacted on is, security is a digital public good. Everybody has it's a basic right. Everybody needs it. It's like GPS, it's like road infrastructure, and security is essentially that. It's a public good. Everybody has to have an access. And I think that's where, we connected on the open source, essentially the passion for open source. And now let's just, try and, look at open source in security and how leaders such as yourself, companies such as Snap, essentially look at this from a strategy point of view, really, right? At what level open source security solutions are considered by your teams, be it the detection engineering team, be it the security engineering team, or DevSecOps, or you name it essentially? Is it one of the options that comes to the team's mind, or you essentially always start with open source solution? How do you really think about it?
We almost always start with open source and the reason from there. Now, there are some things we wouldn't build, like we wouldn't build an antivirus team, and that's really involved, and other people have done it really well. We probably wouldn't build some other commodity tools, but would we build a service around device trust to assure that every single corporate device on the network actually belongs to the company? And when you authenticate to a company endpoint, we can add in a payload in the authentication header to assure that endpoint is actually the company's endpoint and it's not a rogue endpoint. That's something we built. We call it device trust. So it's foundational, right? We could have went and bought something similar. Sure, there's Beyond Corp style zero trust products in the industry, but that's not how we approach it. Let me tell you a little bit more about why. Let me zoom back out to the kind of cloud angle here. To me, it's really ironic that the cloud and the internet are built on open source technologies broadly. However, most security tools are closed source commercial products. This has a bunch of downsides that I want to talk about. I think it holds back security engineering as really being seen as a true engineering discipline in a lot of companies. At high technical bar companies, this isn't the case, but in lower technical bar companies, security is seen as a compliance function, as the policy people who say no. But why is that the case? At the foundation, security is an engineering problem, right? And so at internet scale, the way that we operate, we need to build to support the ecosystem that we're part of. If I can't convince an engineering team that a security control needs to be implemented and built in a certain way, and we can't have like low level observability of how we do that, especially in the cloud context. Some companies want to treat it more as like a dial or manage a Rolodex of vendors. Run some tools, look at some logs, have some alerts, do some follow-up. At the end of the day, this is risk management. Like they can choose to manage the risk that way. We've chosen to manage the risk a very different way, a very intentional way, a very deep way, a very methodical way. And to do that, we have to really understand what's going on. And to do that, we need to have low-level understanding of the code, of the provenance of it. If it comes from open source, which of course we can always look because open source is open, or build it in-house. So that's a little bit of our ethos, Sandeep.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. In fact, as you were outlining that particular example, I totally concur that operationalizing security program at scale is an engineering problem. It is not a vendor problem. It's not any of those other things, really. and especially at your scale or any internet scale companies, it's the tool, the product that you're using has to be out there in the public. You should be able to look at the source code, build faith around the thesis the product has, maybe even sort of evaluate it internally to see if it is, it meets your own standards of quality, really, right? And the second one is scale.
Exactly.
Most of the closed source product, and I totally agree with you, they probably wouldn't scale to where Snap is at or where Google is at for sure, really, right? So you can take the code from open source, customize it, operationalize it, truly the way engineering happens in top tier tech companies, really. So I couldn't agree with you more, really.